You have attended numerous Speak Out days, and I think how many has there been? 14, 15? So many. I'm not even sure how many Speak Out days, national Speak Out days. Do you
I
know?
just asked Carl. It's not quite that many, but getting close to it. I think it's 12 or 13
12 or 13?
because there's a couple of people that have been to every one. So yeah, there's only two people I think that've been to every Speak Out Day.
Okay, so I'm pretty aware of Speak Out Day, but I don't know all the details that are involved in Speak Out Day. I know it's the day that you go and advocate for ESSA funding to ensure that federal funding is in place. But can you talk a little bit more about, and especially this year that's virtual, because this is going to be the first virtual Speak Out week day, March 15th to the 19th. Talk about what is Speak Out Day and is it truly effective?
Yeah. So I'll start by putting my, let's see if I can do this without falling off the bicycle. Put my shoe up on the screen because one of the things with Speak Out Day, that is my custom Nike that was made for last year's Speak Out Day. So I'll give you wasn't the best view of my Speak Out Day shoe. So this actually is one of the greatest, funniest, coolest stories. Chris Watts was president of Colorado Shape about 4 or 5 years ago. And he went to D.C. And like most of us, when the first time you go to Capitol Hill and you're meeting with representatives and congressional aides and people in offices, it's a lot to take in. It's exciting, but it's also intimidating because we're out of our comfort zone. And so we go and we advocate for funding and things like that. And I'll talk more about that. But Chris forgot his dress shoes. And he got to D.C. and he brought everything else with him. And he's a teacher salary, so he wasn't going to go out and buy a new pair of dress shoes and didn't really have an opportunity to. So he was stuck with wearing his bright PE shoes that he had for class. And so when he got to the Hill, he's decked out, dressed up in tie, and everybody's like, "Hey, I love your shoes. Hey, I love your shoes." And so Colorado Shape was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe he's onto something. So the next year, everybody from Colorado did that. They all wore their brightest neon shoes that they could find. And that bore the tradition where every year since. And it's really cool because when we go to the Hill now, last year, I think I'm going up on 6 or 7 straight Speak Out days that I've been to. People that work as the Capitol Police, the people in the offices, when we walk in with our neon shoes on, they're, "Oh, you're the PE people. You're the health people." So it really has branded that message with the congressional people, and that's what we want, right? That's kind of it. Just happened, and that's led us to a lot of success. For instance, the biggest win we have around Speak Out Day is around the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Under No Child Left Behind, the federal government would only fund core subjects, which means that health and PE were always left out of the equation. Local districts didn't have local control to give money to health and PE, even if they wanted to, because we weren't in the federal definition. So we advocated and continued to show up on the Hill. That didn't just happen magically. That happened because in a year we'd have anywhere from 40 to 50 states represented, and up to 250 people would be on the Hill annually. And that's just one part of the bigger advocacy picture. But those face-to-face meetings were always critically important. And that's how we got to be labeled a well-rounded subject. So think about this. Any school district in America now can allow federal dollars, Title I, Title II, Title IV, to be used for health and PE. Now, there's a bigger systems problem with what we measure and where the money goes, but we at least have access to those dollars, and that's what we're still advocating for now, is to continue to improve the system. Now we're at the table, but now we got to make sure that more of those dollars are being utilized for our programs. And so virtual Speak Out Day this year will happen March 15th through the 19th. I encourage you to reach out to, we just did a training webinar the other day. Reach out to your state association to learn more. We have a great, it's a little different this year, obviously, because we're scheduling Zoom calls and virtual meetings rather than being on the Hill. And it was, the other thing I'll say about Speak Out Day, just on the personal side, it was last year I got the opportunity to bring our state superintendent of the year, Brian Creasman, with our Kentucky delegation. So we brought 5 people to Speak Out Day last year, and our state superintendent of the year was one of those people. And he started an initiative as a state superintendent called #FitSups, SUPTS. So he still posts and encourages superintendents to own this conversation more. And that's so critically important because the 4 of us can sit here and preach and talk about this all we want. But when we got superintendents and administrators like Lorinda that are being that vocal voice for why this is important, it's so critical. And so last year at Speak Out Day, we got to the Hill. I think there was probably maybe 5 to 10 people that's where we were at COVID, right? It had just started. We knew it was out there. It was early. It was like March 10th through the 12th or something last year, or 10th and 11th. And when we got to Speak Out Day, a few people couldn't come because they were starting to see the initial travel restrictions. But we went ahead with the event, and the only thing we knew is don't shake hands. That's the only thing we knew at that point. We just knew not to shake hands. So when you walked into all the offices, you're just saying hello, and we weren't even social distancing. We just knew not to shake hands. But it was fascinating to watch it play out from Brian's perspective because he and I flew in and out on the same flight. And from a superintendent's perspective, just to see COVID happen. Because when we left, he didn't think we'd ever close schools because schools were so important, so critical, but we had never confronted a global pandemic before. And we didn't know what was lying ahead. And sure enough, by the time we landed back in Kentucky, we had already made the decision to start closing schools that Friday. I think some schools went in closed and some said, let's have one more day and then we'll figure out what's going to happen. So it was a very historic Speak Out Day last year. And so really excited about the virtual one this year. And I think more people will get involved as a result of having access to those meetings.
I know that we're going to reach out to our associates in North Carolina. And for those who are listening, the success of being a well-rounded course, health and PE, for those who don't know, that was huge because as a district coordinator of a large urban school district, I was constantly being told, no, we don't have the local funding. We don't have the local funding for health and PE teachers to go to professional development. We don't have the local funding for this. But now that Title II, which is professional development, now that health and PE is a well-rounded course, that now we get the PD funding, the Title I funding. So you did mention that, and I just want to highlight that to all our listeners and viewers, how important that was to be able to be allowed to access that funding pots of money. I always call it buckets of money. It's all about where are the buckets of money and how does that money basically is allowed to get spent. So that was huge. So now we're allowed to put up proposals and we're allowed to say, hey, give us some of that money. So that was huge. So thank you for advocating for that.
Yeah, it's good. And while we've made progress, and I'll always focus on the progress we've made, we still have a lot more. We have a lot of silent voices, people that aren't engaged in the process. The Shape America tools make it so simple to send emails, to send letters, to tell your story. I remember the first time we were in Representative Andy Barr's office, Daniel Hill, our president at the time, looked at him and said, I get $300 a year in PE budget, and that's all I get. The guy, his jaw dropped. He didn't understand that. So it's easy for us to sit back and say, oh, politicians don't care. Oh, they just not going to listen. But if we don't at least attempt to be engaged in the process, how are they going to fix something they don't know is wrong? And that's how easy we make it with the email. So even if you're not able to join a virtual meeting, send an email. That's the easiest thing we can do. And we've got to continue to do a better job of being a part of that. Because think about that. Think about, Kim, you be an elected official right now. I show up in your office tomorrow and I make my pitch to you. Well, if this is the first time you've heard about my pitch that I want you to do as my local elected official, but think about if you just read 10, 15, 20, 30 emails the day before I step in your office.
That's right.
Now I'm on the radar. Now I have some validity because, like, hey, my constituents are pretty passionate about this. And if we would learn to use our voice better, not just through the single day event, but constantly giving of our time and talents through messaging, it'd go a lot further.